Welcome to English Simple Hub. This is the deep dive, and today we have a really specific mission, one that's customized just for you, the learner. We have a stack of sources here detailing model responses and core vocabulary for the IELTS Speaking Test, Part 1, and it's all centered around one topic, picnics.
That's right. And our mission today is to treat these sources, well, almost like a linguistic treasure map.
A treasure map, I like that.
Yeah, because we're not just here to give you answers to memorize. I mean, that gets you nowhere fast. What we're doing is extracting the high-leverage language, the grammatical complexity that really targets a Band 9 score.
So it's a kind of shortcut.
It is. It's a shortcut to being well-informed, not just about picnics, but about how to talk about the past, frequency, and contrasts in, sophisticated English.
Exactly. We're aiming for efficiency and depth. We're going to go through the most common questions, look at the vocabulary choices, and crucially understand the structural phrases that make your speech sound polished, educated, and, well, natural to a native ear.
And the insight here is so transferable. You're going to gain some really powerful knowledge quickly, and you'll walk away understanding why these specific phrases are so valuable.
I see.
If you learn the underlying principles, you can apply them to any Part 1 topic, whether the examiner asks you about hobbies, hometowns, or, in this case, a nice day out.
Okay, sounds great. Let's unpack this, starting with the past.
Yeah.
So the first source question is this. Did you go on a picnic when you were a child?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we look at this, the simplest answer uses the simple past. Yes, I went to picnics. Why is that basic approach just a massive missed opportunity for grammatical range?
Because it tells the examiner absolutely nothing about your control over anything other than the most basic tense. The first essential structure you need to master here is used to.
Right. Used to.
It's a foundational piece of intermediate grammar that so many candidates, surprisingly, they just skip it or misapply it.
So tell us a bit more about the power of using used to.
Well, it clearly defines a state or a repeated habit in the past that isn't true anymore, or at least it's only rarely true now. So instead of just, I went, we used to go on picnics with my extended family every summer.
I see.
It immediately signals a controlled grammatical choice. If you don't include it when you're talking about past habits, you are limiting your score from the get-go.
And building on that idea of, past frequency, the sources suggest another highly effective structure. It's a step up from simply saying usually, and that's to tend to.
Yes. What's fascinating here is how often native speakers substitute tend to for usually. It conveys regularity, but with a slightly less rigid feel.
It sounds more natural.
It does. It elevates your response subtly, making your English sound less like a textbook script. So instead of we usually went on public holidays, you could say we tended to go on bank holidays.
Okay, now that term bank holidays, that's a very specific cultural reference, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mostly tied to the UK and Ireland.
It is.
What do we need to know about that?
Mm-hmm.
And are there maybe better alternatives for an international test?
You're right to flag the context. A bank holiday is simply a public holiday where most banks and businesses are closed. It's a very specific, natural phrase for the UK context.
Okay.
However, if you're not sure if your examiner will immediately connect with that, or if you're aiming for more neutral English, substituting it with public holidays or national holidays is always a safe and equally effective choice. Always have that alternative ready.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Okay, here's where we move from basic structural improvements to something you called high-impact linguistic architecture.
Yes.
The use of the past continuous tense. How does something that seems fairly straightforward so dramatically boost a score?
This is a high-impact strategy because it shows you can handle complex subordination. You're weaving together background information with the main action. Non-native speakers often overuse the simple past and miss these chances to, set the scene.
And the source has a specific phrase it wants you to learn.
It does. It's the clause, when the sun was shining.
So we're learning not just the structure, but a perfect application of it.
Precisely. The structure itself, when plus subject plus was were plus verb plus ing, it expands your grammatical repertoire beyond just simple sentences. It says, look, I can establish a background condition. You could say, we used to pack up the car for a picnic when the sun was shining and the weather was warm.
That depth, it really communicates control to the examiner.
Immediately.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Now let's pivot slightly to some useful phrases that help us link ideas and express contrast. The source highlights instead of plus V'ing.
Yeah, it's extremely functional. This structure allows you to explain alternatives or contrasts really concisely. The example in the source, talking about childhood, is perfect. My parents wanted to get us out of the house instead of watching TV.
And the key rule here.
The key rule is that instead of must always be followed by the verb in the ing form. It's a great marker for accurate grammar.
And what were the kids doing instead of being outside? They were watching TV, and they were probably watching it 204/7. This brings us to a useful idiom.
It does, and it raises an important question. Is 247 appropriate for the IELTS test, given its informal origins?
That's a good challenge. It's certainly informal, right? Referencing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, meaning all the time.
And that's exactly why you should use it, sparingly, of course. Fluency isn't just about formal language, it's about sounding natural.
Ah, okay.
Using a phrase like 247 in a personal anecdote, like describing how much TV you watched as a kid, it demonstrates that you understand and can deploy common idiomatic English. That contributes a lot to your overall fluency score.
So it's a risk-reward choice.
And in this context, the reward is high.
I appreciate that clarification. Okay, finally, to wrap up our discussion of past frequency, there's a simple yet essential adverbial phrase from time to time.
It's a beautiful phrase. It just means occasionally or every so often. If you can pepper your responses with phrases like this instead of always relying on basic adverbs like sometimes, you instantly add sophistication.
And linguistic variation.
Exactly.
All right, let's jump to the present and talk about frequency. The source question is, how often do you go on a picnic? Now, if the answer is not often, we need a powerful way to say that.
Right. We have to avoid the simplest possible response. And the phrase on a regular basis is excellent here. It's slightly more formal than just regularly, and it works well for both the speaking and writing sections.
So how would we use that to convey a low frequency?
You'd say, it's not something I do on a regular basis. That phrasing is just crisp, it's professional, and it signals strong lexical control. Compare that to, I don't go often.
The difference in score potential is enormous.
Huge.
And what if I want to set a clear boundary? You know, the absolute maximum I might go once a year, maybe twice, but never more.
Then you need at most. This phrase clearly establishes the ceiling of frequency. For instance, I go twice a year at most. It's concise, it's effective, and it demonstrates precise language.
That's great. We looked at instead of plus Ving earlier. When we're talking about alternatives, the source also provides a related structural synonym, rather than having.
And this is great for demonstrating synonyms and range. Rather than having functions almost identically to instead of having, both have to be followed by a verb in the ing form.
I think.
So using both structures within your overall speaking test, maybe instead of in part 1 and rather than in part 3, is a subtle but really powerful signal of mastery.
And the simple motivation for this whole topic, whether you're having a full picnic or just stepping outside for 5 minutes, is often simply to get some fresh air.
It's a common natural idiom. It just means going outside for a bit. If you can include natural conversational English like this, it helps demonstrate fluency and it keeps the discussion feeling relaxed.
Which definitely works in your favor. Now, for a word that is, I think, universally impressive and versatile, it's applicable to everything from parties to decisions. Impromptu.
Impromptu is an incredibly high-value word. It means unplanned, sudden, or spontaneous. It fits seamlessly into both formal writing and relaxed speaking.
For instance.
Well, if you decide to sit outside and have lunch because the day is unexpectedly beautiful, that's an impromptu picnic.
Yeah, that sounds much more advanced than just saying a sudden decision.
Exactly. It shows advanced lexical resources. You could say something like, most of my recent picnics have been quite impromptu, just grabbing a sandwich and heading to the park because the weather cleared up.
That word choice instantly tells the examiner that you are operating at an advanced level.
Without a doubt.
Let's shift our focus to location and description. The next question asks, where do you go on a picnic? This requires us to use descriptive language, and we absolutely need to banish the simple adjectives.
We must eliminate nice, good, and fine. If you are aiming for a band 9, every single adjective must be scrutinized. The source suggests aiming higher, using advanced descriptive combinations, something like stunningly beautiful.
The combination of the adverb stunningly with the strong adjective beautiful really elevates it. Why is that pairing so effective?
Because using an adverb to modify an adjective like exceptionally green or remarkably peaceful demonstrates control over various parts of speech. It adds texture and vividness that a simple adjective just can't achieve.
So you're showing not just the object, but the degree of the quality.
Precisely, which is crucial for detailed description.
And we see that useful habitual structure tend to go pop up again here, which reinforces that cross-topic mastery we talked about earlier.
Right. I tend to go to the park near my office during my lunch break. It reinforces the habitual nature of where you go, and as we discussed, repeating useful, targeted grammar points across different contexts is a sign of true mastery, not just memorization.
Now, let's talk about a huge insight the source provides regarding grammar. Continuous tenses. The present continuous, for example, used in a clause like, if I'm not working. It seems so simple. Why is the correct and consistent use of continuous tenses such a massive win for IELTS examiners?
This is a critical point for international learners, especially for those whose native languages rely less heavily on continuous forms. In English, we use continuous tenses constantly to discuss temporary actions, background actions, or actions happening around a specific time.
So, for example,
Well, if you always default to the simple present, if I don't work, it sounds slightly abrupt or, a bit machine-like.
right.
When an examiner hears a candidate correctly deploy the present continuous, for example, I only go to the park on weekdays if I'm not working late that day, it immediately sounds more fluid and more native. It signals greater control.
So, using if I'm not working is a deliberate move to sound more native, even though the simple present seems grammatically acceptable.
Precisely. It's about sounding natural, not just being accurate. And speaking of location, if you do venture outside your usual area, the source suggests describing that distance using the phrasal verb further afield.
That's a lovely idiomatic choice.
It is. It simply means further away. So instead of the slightly bland, I sometimes go further away, you can say, if I have the weekend free, I might head to the coast or somewhere further afield. It just flows so naturally.
And adds a nice dimension to your descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, finally, let's tackle the tricky distinction question, which requires solid contrastive language. What is the difference between a picnic and cooking at home?
This is where specialized vocabulary and complex connectors can really shine. First, let's define the food category for picnics. Finger food.
Right, food you eat with your hands, no utensils. The source provides excellent examples, not just sandwiches, but pizza and the very specific wrap.
Yes, and using precise nouns like wrap, which, is meat, salad, or cheese rolled up in a tortilla or flatbread, it shows specific real-world English knowledge. You're demonstrating breadth in your vocabulary, which is essential for the higher bands.
Now, we need a strong formal connector to move into the contrast. We've used whereas before, but we need an alternative.
For this, we turn to in contrast to. This is slightly more formal than whereas and allows you to structure the contrasting sentence very effectively. It's a great tool.
Let's see that in action. How would we use in contrast to here to articulate the distinction between the two types of meals?
You could say something like, picnic food generally consists of cold finger food, like wraps or sliced pizza, in contrast to a home-cooked meal, which is often a hot meal requiring utensils like a knife and fork.
Wow. That single sentence is packed with high-value vocabulary, precise grammar, and a formal connector.
That is a Band 9 response right there.
And that example clearly summarizes the core difference from the source. Picnics are generally cold, utensil-free finger foods, while home cooking is often hot and requires a knife and fork or chopsticks.
Exactly.
We've walked through 4 specific questions, but the real benefit here isn't the picnic answers. It's the transferable linguistic ammunition we've gathered.
Absolutely. The overall strategy has to be focused on these transferable nuggets. You learn from time to time the essential past structure used to, the advanced word impromptu, and the formal connector in contrast to.
Right.
Learning these specific phrases expands your English ability far beyond just the speaking test. It aids your comprehension in reading and listening as well.
So that systematic approach, pulling out just 4 or 5 high-value structures and words from a model response, that's really the engine of rapid, targeted language acquisition for serious learners.
And this is so crucial for anyone preparing for IELTS, whether you need the grade for studying abroad or securing residency. Even after you achieve the score you need, keep practicing and expanding this kind of nuanced language. It will be vital for your life outside the test.
For genuine communication.
For genuine communication, yes.
This specific deep dive focused on the picnics topic, but I want you, the listener, to consider this. How key grammatical structures like used to and tend to can be immediately adapted to answer any Part 1 topic about past habits, your favorite subject in school, or your past study routines. Similarly, descriptive language like stunningly beautiful and further afield can be used to describe any favorite location. The question for you now is, which of these powerful structures will you adapt immediately for the next topic you practice?
That adaptability and versatility of these structures, that's where the real power lies in achieving that Band 9. Use them and own them.
That's a great thought to end on. Thank you very much for joining us, and take care. Ask you to subscribe to the channel for more IELTS podcast.